What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am live, and I am the Crypto Crow. It is 3:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am here with the very hairy Joe Roets. Wait, your internet connection is unstable. That's a message that I just got. I should be pretty stable. But anyway, we're here live with DragonChain CEO. We're making it happen. We weren't sure if it was going to work, quite frankly, because I think both of us are having weird issues with the interwebs. Joe, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Are you having fun yet?
Thank you. Yes, of course, right?
So there's a little bit of a delay, I guess, in our audio. So I'll have to keep that in mind. So yeah, you've grown a lot of facial hair since the last time I've seen you. It's been, I don't know what, it's been probably a couple years, I think, hasn't it?
I think so. I don't even know the date that was, but yeah, that was a while back. And
yeah,
it's all black market haircuts right now. So
black market, exactly. Isn't that right? I forgot to plug in my earbuds. That way you're not echoing to everybody. Good evening from Ireland. New shirt. Yeah, this new shirt's actually kind of nice, except it makes me look like I have nice boobies. I mean, I'm like poking out of this thing. It's like a silky polyester something. I'm not sure. It feels good and it looks good. It's got the Crypto Crow on the back you can't see and all that. Melanie's in the house. I haven't seen you in a while. Where you been? But yeah, thanks. You can get the shirt. There's a link in the description. I dig it. I actually think it's pretty cool. Makes me look a little sporty. So anyway, on with this chat. Now, obviously, I did a video yesterday about DragonChain and kind of what's popping, and a lot of people were like, Crow, where was this before the pump? And I'm like, it is what it is. Like, what can I tell you? I mean, I discovered a lot of new things and very exciting stuff. So I guess to start this off a little bit, for those who maybe aren't exactly familiar with DragonChain, explain a little bit about what the purpose of this whole project is.
Okay. Focus is very much, I mean, I'm a software architect. I'm a nerd, right? So yeah, we actually, the video that you put together yesterday, very, very fitting. That's the whole point of what we do. It's all fundamentals based. But I got involved in the technology around 2010. And I had, I've been an architect since the 90s, software guy. That's what I love. And when this technology came out, it was pretty amazing for a bunch of different reasons. Focus on liberty, new way to handle, new structure, new way to handle transactions and scarcity and things like this. And I was really interested in figuring out how, what other than currency can be done. And my team back then, we built all types of stuff. And then I left and went to a few different projects, ending up at Disney, building out this what became DragonChain. And our focus, although we retain the philosophical basis of the technology itself, which is about you decentralizing whatever it is and providing power directly to individuals. So it's very individual liberty focused. But my goals were to find ways to get it usable by an enterprise. Because if you want adoption, you're going to need an enterprise to be able to build a real system onto or into that technology. And it wasn't possible, frankly, because of the types of data and the types of constraints that you have with customer data, with financial data, with health data, all of these things you can't just put on a public chain. And looked at all the different aspects, and because I am an architect, that's what I focus on, is scaling and security of primarily bigger systems. And it was a really good challenge. And so at Disney, built a small team. We started building out infrastructure and put together an architecture. And this was in 2014. So, it was only 4 years after I started playing with the tech, but that was so long ago now, it's kind of crazy. But, very focused on protection of business data, protection of business processes, in order that a business could come in and say, we could apply the technology in this particular use case or for this particular capability, and everything centered around that. We can get into the architecture or how it works, but the philosophical goals were primarily for actual technology adoption by real businesses, things that are actually needed in the world, and using interop. And we could go into some of the if you look at the timeline from entry of Bitcoin, entry of Ethereum, and then entry of all of the other projects. And you go before Ethereum, Namecoin. You can go through all of these other, what are now termed altcoins, that
which is the better term for them,
primarily are focused on, right, and the fact that they're focused on utility, right? So it's not just everything's a currency. It's like we do have projects like storage, Siacoin, and we have decentralized storage projects. We have decentralized compute projects. We have privacy coin projects. That all of them have their own utility. And in my philosophical view, you want as much variety as possible. Why? Because the powers that be, and you can look at it with Bitcoin as the simplest. The banks, especially early on, would laugh it off. Then some of them would become they were very threatened by it. And notably, there have been attacks on marketing and or press. You look at Chase, and you can look at all the various things that people have tried to say, oh, it's dead, or it won't survive, or it doesn't work, or it's expensive, or it's slow, or whatever it is. That you frankly need as much variety as possible, because any of them could fail, and you're going to need to have alternatives. And on top of the fact, just purely for competitive reasons, the fact that Bitcoin did, some people hate the fact that Bitcoin forked. You could look at it from a few different angles on price itself. Did it improve? Did it hurt or help? But for technology, at least in my opinion, it's much better to have, like say, the fact that Ethereum Classic exists, I think is a beautiful thing, because if you don't care about the reason that they split, that they are maintaining the pre-fork Ethereum, it's okay. It doesn't matter to you. But on the off chance that matters to anyone or anything or any particular use, it's extremely valuable. And the fact that you have two projects that are at least somewhat interoperable, or it's easy to build things to both, yet one of them has lower fees but less security. That's an interesting feature, right? There are a whole bunch of different things that are useful and applicable, and we came into this deal where, because of our architecture, where every node is independent, every node has its own chain. I mean, even our verification nodes have their own chain. That it was particularly important for interop, because we're interoperability is built inside of our own network, let alone outside. So your business node has direct interactions, obviously, with the nodes that do the verifications for you, but you have a security component. And we could get into interchain. We could talk about the real depth of what interop and interchain means for blockchain.
I have a list of questions. We're definitely diving into that.
Okay. Okay, so that's high level.
No, and we're going to get there. We're going to get there. I think the first things that I want to cover are just things that I see a lot of question about. General questions. Specifically the relationship with Disney, right? There seems to be a lot of confusion about that.
Right.
One question that I have initially is did Disney spawn the idea of, like, did they have the foresight into the technology to get into blockchain in 2014, or did you happen to just be an employee and decide this is a technology realm that I'm going to start getting into? Are you guys on board to support it? Like, how did that culminate?
So I arrived in Disney Seattle, and there were people here, and there were people, obviously, California and Florida, that had a lot of interest in the technology, and primarily on enterprise, not specifically on Bitcoin itself, although that was a big piece, right? And so I came into that, and I was basically talking to them and working with them, and realizing what they were looking at, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys don't know the half of it. We could do this and this and this and this, and it really kicked off a lot of conversations between different business units. So some of them are, I worked for parks, but the majority of our staff on the team worked for one of the IT services divisions, and so we're talking across. We had different bosses. We had it was a very interesting project because it was very decentralized, and it ended up being a thing where we got approval from a senior VP to set up a team, and to start building out to it, to get some time assigned and budgeted, and we worked through the internal hackathons anywhere we could to build to bring in more team members, things like that. And so it was a very organic, natural situation, because I will say everything there is very open to looking at innovations. What can we do? What can we to improve the customer's experience, right? Everything revolved around that. So, if you bring something to the table as a technology that can improve something, they're open to it. And so we brought that, and we started with just a couple of people, and ended up, with given times, we've had up to 25 people working on projects there.
So DragonChain, I'm assuming at this point, DragonChain is a separate entity altogether now. This isn't like a Disney company at this point, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a lot of the confusion that I've seen and people tried to use that as like a FUD mechanism. Like, this isn't a Disney company. Like, who gives a shit? It's really kind of about the tech, not necessarily who owns the everything, right? So, okay, cool. So that's clear. Now, how many projects? I'm seeing chat. Everybody. So I know a lot of people want me to ask, like, is this something that's going to work with something like Chainlink, or is this something that wants to come over the top and dunk on Chainlink?
I'll tell you. So philosophically, across the board, we have a really interesting. We as much as possible keep with that original ethos, where if you were in Bitcoin really early, it felt very much like an extremely interesting open source project where everything was engineering focused. It was software people who happened to have an interest in liberty, right? That's what everything was about, and we try as much as possible to keep that there, and therefore to focus on fundamentals. If you're talking about Chainlink, that's an awesome project. They focus on some things that we don't focus on. There is some overlap with Interop, as an example, with oracles, right? But we particularly did not set out to solve the fully decentralized oracle problem, right? We know it's solvable. We know you could solve it on top of DragonChain. What we did is we implemented specific oracle tech that would make sense to most normal businesses, right? Where most normal businesses for oracles aren't going to need pure decentralization with a full economy based around that. Something you get with Augur as well, right? What we are geared towards is providing a way for an enterprise to realize, gosh, we need that tech. We actually have a purpose to fully decentralize, some data for our system, and we can then interchain plug in directly with Link and model that out on the Link side, yet fully interoperate and let them integrate that into their traditional systems. And that's both inbound and outbound. So it would be, either watching the results on Chainlink and delivering them internally with whatever filtering and tracking you need, but also would be to push out, requests for info or whatever event needs to happen to fire off what you would need to do on the Chainlink side. So across the board, it was very rare to hear me talk ill about projects. I mean, I'll make fun of Tron. Who doesn't, right? But I know, there's
a lot of people love Tron. A lot of people
find
hate
some
Tron.
value in Tron, I'm sure.
As long as people talk about it, that's all that really matters in the end. I think.
The funniest thing is, I actually. That's so funny, and I think in the end, it's one of those things where I like a lot of the people that do like Tron, but maybe it's because I like to give him crap. I like to talk shit on Tron. I sometimes joke about Litecoin too, and there's no reason for that, right? Mm-hmm. It's a totally legitimate project and cool. And
what you're trying to say is that you want to come over the top of Chainlink, but you don't want to say it. Is that what I'm hearing? You'd love to make fun of them, but you're not.
No, it's not. What I want to do is, in fact, I wouldn't. In fact, I think they have some ties. There was, I don't want to go into that. There's some really weird red pill stuff I've seen about Chainlink that I don't know, but I don't know anybody on the project that's actually deep to be able to ask them. Mm-hmm. What are your ties with this org? Anyway, one way or another, what I would like in relation to Chainlink and with any other project, what I would like to do is provide an inbound adoption channel for them that makes it easier for a business to integrate that utility, because it's a real utility with real business value, but it's very niche, right? And in a crypto world, you're on crypto Twitter all the time. You're on things that are important in crypto are not necessarily important to businesses, and they might be in the future, right? But it is a huge hurdle to explain the capabilities, to explain the economy, to explain the integration to a business, right? And so on every context, we've worked quite a bit with developing tech that makes it more sound, makes it easier to integrate, makes it make sense to the people that actually need to use it, right? And that's, we have stuff on stable pricing that some people understand really well and other people use it as a FUD mechanism. It's crazy, but we solved the problem of token volatility for an enterprise, right? Let's say, you go to an old-fashioned traditional business and you tell them, okay, we want to plug this in, and they if you can get them to understand what the value is, and that's a doable thing. When you tell them, then you have to go to this Asian exchange and you have to buy these tokens with this funny name, and you have to move them into your account, and they're going to go up and down in price. And then your fees when you're using them inside the system are going to go up and down in price. It's a non-starter. You aren't going to get their accounting group to give the okay, right? Unless
you have a way
to do it, right?
Limit the volatility of a utility token without market makers and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and it's tied. I mean, you might need to get a holistic picture of how the system works. But yeah, that particular piece is called Takara, and its primary focus is to set a somewhat arbitrary price on the token. And we right now use a I think it's a 14-day moving average to set the price at the beginning of every month. And for that entire month, the token price inside the system is the same. So yeah, you can play the market and you might be able to get them cheaper and bring them in, and that's all fine. And the reason we do that, though, is so that based upon your time, which we can get into time as well in the economy, that based upon your time, you can, as a business, get a deterministically predictable transaction price. So on this node, because I applied 1 billion time, that my transaction price for every transaction I send on that node is going to be 1/100th of a cent. That's the current price right now. If you apply 1 billion time, your transaction fees are 1/100th of a cent, US dollar. And that doesn't matter whether Dragon, and that's for that for that month when you're buying them with your credit card inside the system. The beauty of that is that the traditional companies understand, okay, yeah, okay, I have to pay every transaction I put out, right? And if it's 1/100th of a cent, that's fine. If I have a smaller system, a node that maybe only runs 5,000 transactions a month, I'm not going to need 1/100th of a cent transaction price. I can apply, and I can't remember all the table, but I can apply 10 million time, and maybe my price is 3 cents per transaction. So I can control that in a way that is beautiful because, and again, this, as I talked about, all of the nodes are totally independent. So when I'm deep in my business and things are humming along, everything's operational, and you come out with CryptoKitties DragonChain 1.0, and it explodes, right? And I'm doing 500,000 transactions a month. I'm that's what I need. Everything's working great. You come on and you're doing 8 billion transactions a month, right? Your transactions do not affect my ability to number one, the most important thing, to get my transactions on chain, right? That even though you are running radical amount of volume, my transactions have no difficulty. They're always on chain, just as they were before. On top of the fact, even though you are running through such a radical amount of transactions per month, my fees don't even change. I know my fees are set to be this, 1/4 of a cent per transaction or whatever I set it at, always. And I can adjust that if I need to add a bunch more transactions that I could have some predictability. That's a pretty radical thing, and that is what that time patent that in your last video, the 10-year, and it's like I'm with you. The way that things get named are I don't understand, but it's patent law stuff. The guys we're working with are absolutely brilliant that have written those patents, and it relates to the fact, and it's a scaling mechanism, and it's a little abstract and it's a little crazy, but we're using this time mechanic, which is itself just a score that comes out of your holding tokens in a wallet, right? That we created this Dragon Days of Slumber score, and now it's called time, and it amounts to how many dragons you've held in your address for how many days. That's all it is. And we have mechanisms on ability to transfer them if you want to move to a hardware wallet and things like that. But it's interesting because you can't manipulate that. So it's a particularly interesting security angle for consensus. For verification nodes, they get their cut of fees for block verifications based upon the proportion of time they apply compared to everyone else that's verifying that block. So it's it's a really interesting way that's very well balanced between business and network, so that it's very fair from both angles, because you can't produce time out of the blue. You have to, everybody, including us, has to hold dragons to generate time. And that is the second patent we got. The first was the interchain patent itself.
So how, I guess an easy question that you might be able to answer: how many projects do you have building applications on Dragon right now?
Of the ones that we are working with, around 10,
Okay.
10 or 11 that we're working directly with. There
What
are a lot
sorts
that
of
we
use
don't
cases
know
is
about.
that spread across?
We have recently, especially, we have a bunch of people that came in hot and heavy, wanting to build out health system related, COVID related, because they either have grants or ideas or available resources that weren't, were busy before. And so we have, I think, four of those, although one of them is a group of different, a couple of hospitals. So it's more than one project in one of them. But then we have a couple that we're spinning off. We have a decentralized identity platform that called DragonScale that's about to spin off, and it has customers already. We have Dragon Den that is that I've seen you have been in, and it's about to spin off, so we can get some more focus in there, and we can.
When you
actually
say spin off, what's that mean? Is this like a Navy SEALs term or something, like that's getting spun up? Like, how does that?
It's legally being separated into its own entity, so it can, if it needs to raise funds, it can basically focus on the task at hand. What it's actually right now. When we have them in house, we have to move priorities around. If a paying customer comes in, they might get taken. We might have devs that might be pulled off of one of these projects. So we're going to basically separate them, and in at least the case of Dragon Factor, the decentralized identity, we're spinning it off for strategic reasons with a partner that had extremely good overlap with what we're the vision is trying to build. So those are rolling out. I'm trying to think. We have.
I remember early on, it's probably been 6 months, when I was talking to one of your developers about Den, and I set up an account, and I sent him a list of ideas, and I said, hey, you guys might want to think about XYZ. And he goes, dude, that's what our whole business model is going to be based on. And I'm like, oh, see, I'm smart.
Yeah. Yes.
So I never talked about it with anybody yet. I'm just waiting to see it all start kind of forming up. So we'll see. But yeah, there's definitely some layers I'd like to acquire at some point in the future.
Yes. And that's going to be, by the way, that, in my opinion, and just so you know, like a quick broad brush of that, the vision is really incentivize the content, right? To provide the best content, but how do you do it inside of a community? So think Reddit. So you're thinking of a subreddit. I used to be a big Reddit guy, right? It seems like everything I get into in Reddit ends up getting banned. So
oh, really?
one way or another, that and I was really hopeful when they were going to do a cryptocurrency, but they gave up, I guess. So, but it's good for cohesiveness in a community, right? There's a culture that gets built inside of these communities, and we wanted to model that and say, okay, that community that's focused on whatever subject it is, and we call them layers because it's dragons. That community should be the source of evaluation for any content, whether it's a post, article, reply, whatever, memes, images, whatever. And so we want to incentivize the writer, the contributor, the content creator with mining. The second piece is we want to incentivize the evaluator. So the earlier you evaluate quality content in the positive or negative, the more value you gain in mining as well. And that was kind of a modeling of, if you've been in any extremely active communities on Reddit, where they would have to ask people, don't forget to go to the new tab, because if there are shills, or if there's some particular attack going on from a competing community, let's say the socialists and the capitalist subreddits, right? That getting our people into the new content first helps boost it so that everybody else can see it at least. And so we want to reward people who evaluate early. And it's basically a prediction market for content. Is this piece of content going to be considered valuable by the general community? If it is, I'm going to vote up the crap out of it, because I will get a good percentage of any trending content reward. Okay. The third part was to reward community ownership and development. That is, the people who create a layer, the people who build the community, get people involved, get content writers in, post content on their own, do the things that are necessary to make an active and vibrant community, to reward them. And all of it's with mining. And the main token is Matter, and it's not decentralized. It's not out there yet. It has an interchain property that allows us to do this in a really flexible way. Matter produces energy. Energy is what you use to vote. It's what you expend when you're actually posting an article or a reply or an image. Everything costs a certain amount of energy. And you basically, it helps us with new users to make it usable, make it, you don't have to know anything about any of the crypto at all to use it, but to make it open. And basically, though, the community ownership is this layer, and it's tokenized. So you can literally hold ownership in a community layer. And that way,
I didn't know this was public.
I
didn't know this whole thing was public yet. That's why I kind of shut my mouth. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, because I want a few layers there,
yes.
Joe. I think I'm actually, so like when I go and I follow back, I circle back to the platform every couple months just to see what's changed, if anything, and it seems like development's a little slow. Because I'm not seeing a lot of activity. I'm not seeing a lot of new like features or functionality pop up yet. I mean, is there any time frame as to like how long you think it'll be until this is the kind of thing that we're really starting to drive home? I'm on it. A lot of other people are on it and really starting to build communities up. Like, how long do you think it'll be until that's really getting active?
We're hoping to spin it out within a month or two. The physical entities there, we just have to fix some of the or finalize some of the IP transfer stuff. We're making sure everything's clean. Lore and lot tokens will be going out soon thereafter, which is Lore is the fungible token that gives you it's a layer ownership rights. It gives you the ability to vote in a community process on which layers should be created next. And those votes, if one of those layers wins this process, let's say as an example, we do 10 a month, that those lores become lot tokens 1-to-1. And a lot token is a non-fungible token that represents ownership of that layer. The ownership is important because as matter is mined in the system, as activity happens, as content is produced and it's evaluated, that the matter is split based upon the layer gets a portion of it, the content creator gets a portion of it, potentially replies get cuts, and it's all modeled out. It's really, really nice. But the beauty is we can actually measure how much matter are generated in an average day based upon ownership of that layer per token. Because in this layer there are 100,000 tokens, but in that other layer there may be only 8,000 tokens.
So is this going to be like another token sale type thing, or is this something people are
no.
like? How will I be able to get some of these so that I can start just buying up the whole world and all the layers so that I can just tell everybody I own this. I'm God here.
Yeah. So there are still a couple programs going on that make it that open it. The first let's see here. Anyone who is in the beta will be rewarded from a pool of lore based upon how much matter they produced in the beta, because they were really helping us test out the economy, the attack vectors. They were helping us test out just the UI itself, things like that. So if you produced matter, then you will get lore in your account, right? We are also doing some really interesting pieces that will be detailed in the white paper, which apologies, people keep asking me, and I know I need to get in there and update, because we've, through the betas, we've refined some of the points, right? That was the purpose. So that'll be out soon. But and this is lore. So we're talking about lore itself, which is what you need to create layers. So if you have lore, you can come in, and there are two angles. You can do B2B. So if you're a business, like you would probably want a branded layer to put your content in. There's some interesting, by the way, decentralization mechanisms if you don't trust YouTube, that you can still own your audience with that layer, yet use BitChute, YouTube, or Vimeo, or whatever other platform you want, and it doesn't matter to your admiring public, right? And it just
so in other words, I'm not
even
trying to necessarily just build a YouTube subscribership. I'm trying to build a community, and I'm pushing my content directly to that community.
And we just, in fact, 2 weeks ago, just released an entirely embedded reputation system, so that you can set thresholds for people to be able to do certain things in your community. Like, say, we don't know if Joe is a good citizen, right? Before we let him post in my community, I have a threshold that I watch his posting reputation site-wide. And if he looks generally good, maybe I let somebody in that's an 80% reputation.
It's kind of like Reddit karma.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But let's say we have a much lower percentage for replies, because we're not going to make you come in and you have to have a perfect reputation in order to just ask a question of us. So we can make the reputation lower for a reply. We can make the reputation extremely high if you want to post an image, right? Things like that. So you can limit the control in that community, and yet at the same time, you can take your best fans or your oldest fans and give them ownership in it. So they have some incentive to help you out, right? So you're expanding.
Oh boy,
reach. It's huge, and we've seen this. By the way, we know this works, because the other side of it, when it's not B2B, is what we call the LCP. It's a layer community process, where we've tested it out with energy, whereas the real model is with lore, where basically we say, based upon new users and based upon the clip of adoption that we're seeing, we're going to open up 10 or 50 or 100 layers this month, right? And we limited it on purpose, because otherwise there's there's no content, right? You have thousands of layers, and it's hard to find the content, especially with early adopters, right? So what we did is we limited it, and it will increase. But the process is basically that anybody can come in and propose a new layer. And basically you write it up, you describe it, you give the theming, you give what the culture should be, you give whatever details you can. People go in and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm extremely interested in it. And you might have other people say, you know what, I have no interest in that whatsoever, but I know it'll be successful, right? Mm-hmm. So I just want to put some ownership in. So it is basically a crowdsourced information market on which layers get created next. So let's say there's a particular there's a mechanical keyboards layer. I love that subject, so I'm going to put 100,000 lore in, right? You're going to put in 5,000 lore, because maybe you have a mechanical keyboard and you're interested sometimes, there's some value there. Let's say other people put in it, and I have, let's say, 50% of the ownership of that layer. I can give some of my lot to moderators or to other community members that I trust that will help me maintain it or help me build content or whatever else. And we know in seeing this, even before we have lot in place, that it's driven people to get really involved in one of these
Of course.
communities.
And that this is
And
what you're talking about is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, because I have, at one point I had almost 10,000 people in my Telegram chat, right? And through the bear market, it's just dwindled. And but there's like a hardcore group of people. I mean, I probably have 1,000 or so hardcore people who have just stuck with me through this whole bear market, who they're constantly showing support. They're watching videos just because I'm doing a video. They don't even necessarily need to care about what the video is about. They just like to listen and learn and, hear me rant or cry or like whatever the hell I'm doing, right? And I have for a long time been wanting to come up with a way to give some ownership to what I'm doing to the people who have supported me throughout like the lowest times in crypto. And this sounds like a really cool method that might enable me to do that. How soon am I going to be able to do this, Joe, and get something going? We got to get something going before the market really starts to take off, man. We can't wait around for 6 more months.
Yes. Oh, by the way, so we can, like, tomorrow, if you want, we could turn on a layer, right? We have done special purpose layers, and we have for particular reasons with branding or partnerships or anything else, we can do stuff. We can do private layers too if you need discussion areas that you control.
So I'm going to send you a message. I'm going to say, here's the layer, here's what I need, here's what's popping, and you're going to help facilitate this, right? And then I'm going to be able to start marketing it and telling everybody all about it.
Yes. Yeah, we can do that.
I'm going to hold you to that.
And as for, right on. And as to lore and lot, I mean, those will be out soon. We're trying to plan it for after the legal spin off of the entity, but so the DragonChain is not holding any of that, so it doesn't have to transfer any value or anything. So the other angles to get lore, we know that we will have, and this is in the white paper and everything else, that there will be a 1-to-1 lore to dragon initial. That it's not an airdrop because it'll be locked into the because in the U.S. we're told by our legal team that you can't do airdrops.
Yeah, they don't like airdrops.
Right.
I don't really like airdrops either personally, because you could be getting tax on airdrops you don't even know exist. It's like, what the hell is this? It's like such a joke of a cash grab for the government. I'm like,
so these would be going out to your account inside of DEN that you can be using in the LCP process or in buying business layers. So there's real value there. Yet, and we don't know. We do know that the lore token will be it'll either be ERC20 or derivative. It'll be an Ethereum token, and that's an interop thing that's also very interesting if you want to talk about it. But that it will roll out there, and it will be available in whatever exchanges choose to list it, and or whatever works out. But also, we do expect that it will be available for purchase direct inside of DEN, in one way or another. And there's some really interesting aspects about that. Matter itself will be the same way. It'll be an Ethereum-based token. We almost, you might be interested, we almost had a deal to do Binance token, but we couldn't do non-fungible, and it didn't end up making sense to us. So we were like, well, Ethereum security, we already have really good integrations with Ethereum, obviously. And it is, I think the first dimension of interop is the token transfer, token swap use case utility. So
I'm supposed to ask you about Rainmaker. Is this like
Yes.
I actually own like a really good domain, like rainmaker.com or something. I can't remember what it was, something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Because
Yeah,
that's what they
those
used to
guys,
call me in the mortgage business. I was known as a rainmaker.
really?
I'd go to a
Right
company
on.
and I'd make it rain.
Right on. Wow.
So
Yeah,
I got a
everybody needs that.
domain.
Nice. Yeah, no, those guys, they're basically building an application with us on DragonChain that allows micro influencers, allows community or crowdsourced marketing. So it's basically monetizing word of mouth. Making it easier for people who are passionate about a project help to push that project, right? And rewarding them, incentivizing them, and corralling them a little bit, right? Helping them with timing. Because that's a big part of, we have an amazing community that posts stuff all the time, and some of it's attaboy stuff, right? But a lot of it is actual real content that they're producing, or real questions, or enhancing what we're putting out, and yet it's on their own. Like we're not paying them. They're all doing this. In fact, we got called out in someone will point out what it was, but there was a report that accused us of overshilling or being a fake project because we had way too much discussion of our project on the social channels, given our market cap and other metrics, how often tokens move. And it's, by the way, because I even saw you when you go through all of your standard token metrics, that it used to be somewhat of a point of pride that we had fewer transactions on Ethereum than most projects, because we're our first how do I say, our first dimension of interchain is pretty much technically what everyone else points to for interop, which is token transfer. How do I want to take this token and put it on that chain or map it to that chain, however. Particularly interesting, especially technology point of view, that it's amazing stuff, hard to do, particularly between some of those chains. But it is, for us, the simplest and probably the least valuable of all of the interop potential, because businesses don't care about that, right? It's like they barely understand putting something in a token, putting something on chain. And if you ask them, well, it's like, oh, well, here's value, it's in a market here, people can trade it, and it scares them, first of all. It depends on where they're at also, but the potential for nefarious action is pretty crazy in some of those cases, or for them to get in trouble in other cases, to get fired or whatever. And so we use that ourselves, that since we rolled out 2018, that every Dragon token on the Ethereum network is mapped internally to DragonChain. And a dragon on the inside is a dragon on the outside, except on the inside, we don't have an Ethereum transaction for every transaction that occurs on DragonChain. So you have, like, say, when we did that 24-hour test and we had 250 million transactions go through, those, I can't remember how many there were thousands of interchain transactions to that, hundreds of millions of internal transactions. And yet every single one of those 250 million internal transactions is traceable all the way up to Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic and Binance. That we are actually aggregating the hash power and network power and staking power, everything of those networks for every single transaction you put on DragonChain. Every smart contract, every ledgered data that you place on chain, you have a traceability all the way up to Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? Which is, and if you've looked at the Eternal system, we have a field in there that shows how many what the hash power that has been applied. We have something rolling out that I've been asking for since my time at Disney, that we've never had the the availability of resources and priority to implement it that's about to be put in place, where we actually estimate and extrapolate a US dollar value based upon known average power costs. In a conservative way, we assume pretty low power costs if China, let's say China were to attack my data, right? That they could apply a lot of hash power, right? They have a lot of control of hash power there, and what we're doing is saying your transaction that occurred, let's say a month and a half ago, that maybe somebody's suing you over, or you have to prove to someone this really is what happened, right? Or maybe there are plans for a next gen weapon, right? Your U.S. military, so you can take whatever that data is, and that, okay, on my node, by the way, I only spent a quarter of a penny to put this transaction on chain. But I can look now and say, okay, it went to the Bitcoin blockchain, or the hash of it went to the Bitcoin blockchain at this point, and the Ethereum at this point, and Binance at this point, and Ethereum Classic at that point. That you can take all that hash power, and you can see the hash power, but frankly, it's not understandable to the normal person. I mean, it's so many orders of magnitude more than anyone has any reasonable experience with. Dealing the amount of hash power involved in Bitcoin is crazy. That when we extrapolate it and estimate a dollar value, you can say, oh, I understand $700 million worth of hash power, right? I don't understand YATA hashes or exahashes or whatever else you're telling me. But if you're telling me that almost a $1 billion of security has been applied, and then we don't know if it'll be out in the first pass, but we're going to have a secondary measure, which is with current difficulty. Let's assume a nearly ever increasing rise in difficulty for Bitcoin and Ethereum as an example, that more and more hash power is applied because of new technology and more people coming in. That other than certain hiccups, like when you have a halving or you have a fork or something else, and you have hash power kind of being volatile, that you can take the current hash power and know if I wanted to recreate that whole chain from that point of that transaction, so I could change the data on the transaction, rebuild the whole chain for that past month and a half, it's going to cost me more than the amount that was applied, because there was not as much hash power applied at the beginning of that time as there is now. So we're going to have those two measures. We think we will also even have the ability to provide a hardware measure. How many Bitcoin miners of this class would it take for how long to also rebuild this chain? So it's a couple of things there, but it's mostly to show that's the real power of what we're providing. We're giving you the ability to easily adopt, but to get your data into that mode where that it hasn't been modified. That there hasn't just been some an issue with sunspots and my hard drive is something's corrupt. That you'd be able to isolate things like that. But in other cases, more importantly, if you're in a legal battle or you are dealing with particularly sensitive information, that you can prove something. You can actually prove that this really is the data, and that data can be anything. It can be a currency. It can be a notion of I verified my address as part of my identity with a decentralized, independent document verifier. They signed it. I signed it. It's on chain at that point in time, and we can therefore have some measure in the trust or the value of that data. Right? I'm going forever, but
I'm sure you can, and that's a good thing. Let's talk about something. We're coming in on 55 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about. This is all good stuff. Honestly, it sounds like there's an endless flow of opportunity, options, progress, plans, goals, partnership. I mean, it just sounds like there's so much shit going on. That I'm sure you could talk about it all for like hours and hours and hours, which is really good. But hopefully we start seeing more of this hit the general public eye, as opposed to more of a there are some questions that I had. I'm going to save for next time. But obviously, with the docuseries coming up on the 20th of next month, this is going to draw a lot of eyeballs. I mean, this is going to draw a lot of people who don't know jack squat about blockchain. They've heard of Bitcoin, but now they're going to see this documentary series that is going to draw a lot of attention to blockchain technology and ultimately DragonChain, because to a lot of them, they're going to know Bitcoin exists. And now here's this DRGN thing that apparently is really big and important. And that's going to be the first kind of big thing that what is it, 100 million subscribers or something like that to Science Discovery or Discovery Science right now? Mm-hmm. So there's a potential for there to be a lot more people familiar with DRGN than probably anything else out there other than Bitcoin. Mm-hmm.
Right.
What can these people expect to see during this whole docu? I'm pretty sure I'm in it as well. I haven't. Have you seen it?
I will tell you, I try to not watch whenever they show me a cut because I can't stand hearing my voice.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Recorded, and I can't stand seeing I was like, man, it's like, why didn't you guys tell me that I look that bad, right?
Oh, great.
Anyway, so I tend to not watch when they I'll admit when they send something out. But people in the community do things like that. It's generally, from my understanding, and it's not all finalized, right? But it's generally the tale of me and coming out of Disney and building this thing, right? But woven through the broader picture of what happened 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 in the United States and worldwide. How is Europe handling it? How is Asia handling it? How's the US handling it? What are the good, bad, and ugly about all of it? And telling our story. And I'm trying to get them to plug in some things that they're, just so it's funny. There are some things that they don't want to plug in because they don't know how it will play, but there are radically interesting things in the story that happened that led to a lot of the things that some people complain about, right? Where we're in the US, so we knew going out that we would have a different environment to deal with than if we were an Asian company. So, and then the fact that we came out of Disney too, I didn't want to, just kick up a hornet's nest, right? Because they have armies of literally armies of lawyers, right? And so it's like we played well consistently. I have never changed, nor officially have we ever changed what we describe when people ask, how are you related to Disney? You can look it up and it's
I know this
same paragraph,
but it's right? it's the people that like to try and create FUD for whatever reason, trying to confuse everybody else, and they try to create their own narratives, and it's like it's so frustrating though, because they do this to everything and everybody. It's like it only takes one loud hater to create all sorts of confusion for people, and they love that shit. It's like, get a life, man. But I'm very well aware.
Yeah, and we had, like, say, it was even to the point where when we came out, we had to be extremely focused on following the rules for Disney open source to say, you can't use Disney, you can't use a character name, you can't use all these things, and it's obvious, like they don't want any risk. It's at arm's length. They had to hand it to me. They had to give ownership to me personally. So I proposed, can we create a foundation in case I get hit by a bus or something, right? They approved it. They approved the name. We had to make a name. It was Disney Private Blockchain Platform. I had to propose DragonChain, right? And then they came back after the fact and say,
I'm just saying.
I could have done that, right? You could start a node, man. And then the other bit is that they then required us. They requested. They didn't require. They asked, can you put a disclaimer on all your social, right? So our Twitter account still has the disclaimer that they asked for, which is funny. It's like, you can't mention Disney anywhere, but by the way, please put us in your profile everywhere, right? And in the code and all that. So really interesting stuff. But it's, to me, we've been accused both of over shilling and of being too quiet, right? And it depends upon the context. And it's really weird, but I get it when we're in there because we have constraints. We can't go out and pay for an exchange listing like a lot of other projects. We have specific rules that we've maintained since the beginning that have protected us. And yet we can support, if an exchange is going to list it, we can say, oh, we can give you technical support, we can give you documentation, we can do whatever you need, which is all fundamentals based. And frankly, I think a lot of the reason that you probably hadn't heard the updates because we were the first year rolling out, we were radically focused on meeting this crazy monthly roadmap. We hit every single roadmap goal, which was based on features, capabilities, projects, and just general maturity of the project moving forward. And the second year we decided, okay, that kind of killed us doing monthly roadmap stuff because things change, right? So you're thinking about at the 10 or 11 month mark and you're thinking, geez, why did we say that, right? We need to build this. So we would have to build everything. And now we focus mostly on trying not to announce stuff early, but letting people know so we can get some feedback before we just roll
just do announcements of announcements. That seems to work for some people.
Yes, yeah, we could hire some anyway. We're very much focused on that, but we have a lot of trouble cutting through the noise because a lot of the projects, and in fact, I would tend to say that a lot of the projects that you hear the most about tend to be the ones that are actually doing the least. They're just
I would agree
entirely on, right? And so it's this weird thing that happens where we would post stuff and we think, okay, this is gonna be big news. We're just like, let's let everything hold tight, don't let anybody know, keep stuff secret. It's like, bam, interchain patent, right? You ask me as an architect, as somebody who's been involved in this technology for this long, I was blown away that we got it. Mm-hmm. I thought, okay, we're going to put it in. We're going to put the money in. We're going to put a lot of time into helping the patent attorney understand and really develop the patent right. And they awarded it. And we understand it's the fastest awarded blockchain patent ever. And then we got that expanded. So it was not just multiple interop. It was between two chains interop that now applies. Then we did the loyalty one. We couldn't believe we got that. And so when we got the interchain one, I think this is in the blockchain industry, holy grail patent. This isn't it's a way, like some of the banks with some of their patents were kind of.
My question is, how are you going to utilize it?
We have some thoughts, right? And it depends, right? So, but yeah, we're figuring that out. And being a small firm, it's that there are limitations to some things we can do. At the same
you don't
time.
necessarily want to go picking fights. You can't afford to.
Right.
Even if you win in the end, it's still very, very expensive.
Victories. Yeah. So
it's better to establish mutually beneficial partnerships and paying relationships.
Kind of the angle we're taking. Yeah, that's kind of the angle we're taking because we know, especially some of the bigger entities, that they, in particular, are focused on interop. And that's, and I think, frankly, if you ever want to hear about the interchain stuff, there's some really interesting philosophical points around it that all relate to adoption. Which here's the thing: is
this toke some weed philosophical interesting, or is this
it's both. Yeah, it's very heady, right? But one way or another, I mean, it's one of those things. If you care about the value of the industry, so if you care about the value of Bitcoin, the value of Ethereum, the value of all those other projects out there, you should care about fundamentals, and because that's I think what in 2017, there were a lot of people that lost sight of the fundamental value of these projects and the technologies that were being built.
Completely agree.
It evolved fully into just dollars and cents.
Because there's a difference between a mindset of somebody who's just speculating on the value of something that's ticking all over the place, and somebody who has a genuine interest in the technology that fuels that speculation. And it's like you can tell who the people that are just in it for the money and the people who are genuinely interested in what this kind of technology has to bring to everyone. Mm-hmm. The result of that technology is the potential value of whether the utility tokens or whatever the hell it is. But I feel like so many people jump in and jump back out based off of profitability. And I feel like those who, yeah, dude, I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of surprising what I've witnessed over the past couple years.
Oh yeah. And if you can keep a balance, because I would, I would not ever, in fact, I think you would lose a ton of actual, not just value, I don't know what word to use, but a ton of meaning, even if you took out the monetary aspect. I mean, the financial side of it is what makes it possible to drive the incentives that make the technology extremely interesting. Because anybody that asks you, if you point to, does this work? Is it total BS? Is it going to go away? Even the guys that I've spoken to that are not technical at all, they get the fact that because this scarcity and the economic model around it, and supply and availability and utility is encoded into software, which is something that I can view, and even if I don't understand it, I can trust that someone is at least looking at it because it's open source. That's how Linux works. That's how everybody's phones work now, because that's all open source. So the fact that that's there means that you have incentives to protect that network, right? Which if you look, so if you want to ask, does this work? You can look proof in pudding of Bitcoin itself, that a totally anonymous person or persons built an architecture, built some relatively sloppy code out the gate, threw it out there, and it did take years, but consideration that from 08, 09 to 2020, so we're talking 11 years, that in less than 11 years, that it is the far and away the largest compute concern on earth. That if an alien were to land, they say, what the hell is this? Because more than anything else, you guys care about it, right? And that's solely because of those incentives. That's the whole crazy thing, that it's all a marketplace in software, or at least the establishment of the value of a thing in software that makes it radically scalable, because it's the whole thing, software eating the world, and Andreessen Horowitz, the fact that you're applying software basically to fintech in a way that cuts out the middlemen, or at least makes it possible to cut out the middlemen, is radical. I mean, it's a much bigger deal, in my opinion, than most people even now think it is, right? I think that if you talk purely about fundamentals and the value of those fundamentals, if you look at the Bitcoin network itself, and in fact, frankly, if you look at the Ethereum network itself, there's no way that they're not radically undervalued right now, right? Scarcity itself, and it's the biggest problem is the other side of the coin, is the adoption. That if you don't have adoption, then you're going to be limited in that value. And therefore, if you're looking at the fundamentals, it is, in my opinion, strictly the cases where you can identify this project has great fundamentals, has a great team, all the standard traditional evaluation, and then has on top of that a great economic model, which I can actually literally see. I don't have to trust, I like those guys, or they have a good pedigree, they went to the right schools. This is literally, I can look at the code and I can say, damn, that's real.
That's one thing I wish I were capable of doing, is looking at code and understanding it. That would help me so much. And
there needs to be a better way, by the way, to and we've made an attempt at it. I've not had the time to really delve into it, but there needs to be a better way to document an economic model in cryptocurrency, so that you can compare it to other economics. So that basically, okay, they took this project and they tweaked some things based upon some issues or some other desired incentive, and you can say, damn, that's a brilliant idea. So what the main point is, though, that if you can get those fundamentals established and say, okay, me or my team are going to evaluate from all the different angles of fundamentals in this project, that it is precisely between that and adoption that you literally can, and we've even seen it, see exponential value growth, right? That I can get in because I'm early, or because nobody understands what this project is actually geared to do. And there's the risk and everything else. It's all that is the speculation side of things, but there is value in it because, frankly, if you didn't have SEC, if you didn't have some of the pre-existing constructs of peach tree orchard sales and things that happened in the 30s that we're all now living under, I think that the potential for creating massive value is there. And there is always risk that people will over speculate, people will lose money, people will do things. But the fact that you can establish a project in a way and immediately get loyalty, immediately get resourcing to build a project is pretty amazing. And that model, I wish, was still there. And I think my fear is some people think that it's dead, that there's no way you can ever do that again. It's like, no, you can't be.
No, that's not true at all.
You can't stop it. You can't stop it.
That's not true at all. And I think that the future is very bright, I think, overall for crypto. I mean, we're still in such early stages. I mean, I don't think people realize that. We're still, when I look at a lot of these projects right now, a lot of them are still toddlers in diapers running around trying to get fed. You know what I mean? And it's like the adoption will come when the technology is ready and the eyes are open to embrace it. And I think that that's coming. But right now, it's the FOMO that ultimately I think drives this market in a great way. And we're gonna get there. And I'm not going anywhere. You know what I mean? It's like there are going to be ebbs and flows to this thing, but I do believe that it's going to be the people that continue to educate themselves and explore new ideas, explore new projects, and stand behind the ones they believe in, that are going to remain a vital part of the communities overall and help educate and draw new people in. So look, I love the project, Joe. We're going to have you back on again. Don't be such a damn stranger, man. Check your freaking Telegram every now and then, will you?
Oh, gosh. Yes, I'm sorry.
Gosh. And I want my damn layer.
Okay, we'll do that. By the way, for the people that were complaining about why didn't you talk about us before, I know it was at least 4 months ago that you were talking to me about coming on or talking about it. And
thank you for pointing that out, Joe. I've been trying, people, but Joe's a busy man getting his damn patent so he can rule the interoperability world.
Right on.
Thanks a lot for coming on, man. Cool. DragonChain, check it out. Do your own research. Make sure you continue reading. Look, I'm looking forward to next month. I think things are going to really start popping. And not just for DragonChain, but for the market overall. I think a lot of new eyes are going to be opened. And I'm definitely excited to learn more about your journey through the docuseries. Of course, JD Serafine is amazing. Very good dude, too. Like, he's such a cool, chill guy who just really loves the space. Like, he's definitely, not that I know a lot of people around Hollywood, but he's definitely got to be one of the most genuine. So
it's very interesting, right? Because he's in it for the right reasons.
Right.
It's beautiful working with him. He's really good to work with. So
yeah, very, very, very cool fella. He's been in chat for a while. I think he might have pieced out. But anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. Until next time, crow your coins, and I will see you again very, very soon. Enjoy your evening. It's dinner time.